Ginger beer is the most refreshing drink, and it's actually very easy to make. I'll show you. I first start with some fresh organic ginger root. I soak it in some water for about 10 minutes or so, and I basically do this because I want to loosen and soften the skin. I use a spoon to basically peel off the skin to remove it. Don't skip this step. I tried before, and if you leave the skin on the ginger, it actually has kind of like a bitter taste to it. I'll usually break apart the ginger into pieces that are manageable and then proceed to scrape off the skin from each of the pieces. This recipe is for Caribbean ginger beer. It's traditionally a non-carbonated, non-alcoholic beverage that tastes amazing. So once I've peeled all the ginger, I add the pieces to the blender. Any pieces that are too big, I usually just break them apart with my hands. Now, I know traditionally you're supposed to grate the ginger, but I'm not about that life, so I go ahead and pulse it in the blender. It tastes amazing and it's much easier. I add some water to the blender. Of course, the description below will have the full recipe of how much I use of everything. This is how the ginger looks. I go ahead and pulse it on the blender, and basically that means I turn the blender on and off repeatedly in short intervals just to basically break the ginger up into small pieces. This is the texture you want to see when you open up the blender. You don't want to finely grind it down or anything. Instead, you want this rough texture. Set the ginger aside and get your pot ready. You're going to add a total of 10 cups of water to a large pot and then allow it to boil. Grab one lime and wash it well because we'll be using the peel. Go ahead and slice it, and then you want to go ahead and juice it and set that juice aside. This is one of my favorite tools that I use to juice. It's super easy and quick, but of course, feel free to just juice with your hands. Remember, it's very important to save this peel. It's going to add some flavor later, and we're going to throw it in the pot. I'm super new to loving ginger. I'm Nigerian, and my family didn't really cook with ginger growing up. My husband, however, who's Caribbean, basically came out of the womb loving ginger, so this recipe is a modified version of what he taught me. So I bring a pot of water to boil, and as soon as it starts to boil, I actually turn it down to medium-low. Then I'll go ahead and add some cinnamon sticks, followed by some whole cloves, and then I add some allspice, followed by some ground nutmeg. I cover the pot and I allow the spices to cook on medium-low heat for about 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, I turn off the heat and open the pot. I sweeten it with some white granulated sugar. You can do this to taste. I use about 2 cups. You also can feel free to use any sweetener you prefer, whether it's brown sugar, agave, whatever you choose. I tend to keep it simple and use white granulated sugar. I basically stir repeatedly to get it to dissolve. You can see now the little granules of sugar are no longer visible inside of the pot after I stirred repeatedly. Next, I add the fresh squeezed lime juice that I had set aside, and I also throw in the lime peel as well for flavor. Then I go ahead and add some raw rice, followed by the ginger that I had pulsed in the blender. I go ahead and dump everything in, and then I actually use some of the liquid in the pot to kind of help myself rinse out the rest of the blender. This recipe makes about 12 cups of ginger beer, and I don't want to dilute the flavor by adding any additional water, so that's why I use the same liquid from the pot and add it right back in again. So I mix everything around well and then cover the pot and let it sit out until it's cooled completely to room temperature. Once it's room temperature, I store it in the refrigerator. I take it out of the refrigerator and prepare to strain it with a strainer and then also a cheesecloth. I basically don't want any particles inside. The amount of time that you let the ginger beer sit in the refrigerator depends on how strong you want the ginger kick to be. I usually recommend at least 24 hours, but you can do longer, such as 48 hours or even 72 hours if you want the stronger ginger taste. So I go ahead and mix everything together and then I prepare to strain it. I grab a measuring cup and I put some of the liquid into the cheesecloth and strainer to strain it into a bowl. I found it's easier this way as opposed to straining it directly into a pitcher. At this point, your whole kitchen's going to be filled with this amazing smell of ginger and spices. So I go ahead and strain it. Be sure to always take a spoon and press out the pulp just to get out any extra liquid. With each batch that you strain, go ahead and add it to your desired container. I'm horrible at pouring liquids. I spill everywhere, so I enlist the help of my husband because he's the one with the steady hands. I go ahead and pour it into a pitcher and then go ahead and do the process all over again. So again, just pour the liquid into a cheesecloth and strainer, wring it out, and then go ahead and press it down with a spoon just to remove any additional pulp and liquid. Then pour the liquid into your desired container to store or drink, and before you know it, you're done. The most delicious, refreshing ginger drink you'll ever taste. If you don't finish all of this delicious drink right away, feel free to store them in glass bottles like this. I also have a no sugar added version where I use pineapple juice as a natural sweetener, so I'll post that video sometime in the future. Thanks again for watching. Check out all of our cooking videos here on YouTube.